Welcome to the Michigan History Nightmares video series. My name is Lynne Smyles. I'm a retired school teacher turned author. Now in the next 4 videos, we're going to be taking an exciting journey through Michigan's history with Katie and the gang as they draw us into their Michigan History Nightmares. Now during the videos, you'll have an opportunity to interact with the stories by using your special invisible Michigan pen. At the conclusion of each video, there will be ideas and or links that support the stories. Now, as I go through the books, I'm not going to read the stories. I'm going to read snippets, which would be like trailers when you go to the movie, showing you or reading to you the most exciting parts. Other times I will be telling the story. So let's take a look at Volume 1. Volume 1 has 2 books. Book 1, Trapped in the Lower Peninsula, which has to do with the geography of the Lower Peninsula, and Book 2, A Narrow Escape in the Upper Peninsula, which talks about the natural resources. So I have a question for you. How many of you have ever had a nightmare? Raise your hand. Now, nightmares can seem really scary, but what if your nightmares came true? Unlike most kids, Katie's nightmares don't end when she wakes up. So, are you ready to find yourself lost in a copper mine? Crashing headfirst over a waterfall, being captured by pirates, being attacked by a black bear, coming face to face with the headless horseman, or find yourself pulled into a parallel universe with no way out? Well, hold on tight. Michigan history is about to get real. Trapped. Katie couldn't move. She felt the cold, smooth ice that surrounded her. Her eyes darted back and forth, looking for a way out. Her hands scraped frantically at the walls of ice. She was trapped. Her breath came in quick gasps, causing small clouds of condensation to form around her head. Suddenly, she felt a slight downward shift. Crunching and scraping sounds, like car tires grinding against gravel, echoed in her ears. It was then that Katie realized she was inside a glacier, moving down a mountain and carrying with it great boulders, branches, and other debris. Then another sound, this one more familiar. It was faint at first, as if it were coming from some distance away. The noise grew louder. It was the drone of a buzzer. Katie jolted upright in bed. The alarm blared in her ears. With trembling hands, she turned off the alarm, trying to shake off the remnants of that horrible dream. She heard her mom calling from the kitchen. It was time to get ready for school. Katie's mind shifted from her dream to what it would be like in the 3rd grade. The first day of school was always nerve-wracking. She had heard from her friends in the 4th grade that 3rd grade was pretty cool, although this year there'd be a new teacher. Her name was Mrs. Ojibwa. Funny, it seemed that Katie had heard that name before. Wasn't that the name of an Indian tribe? Well, rumor had it that Mrs. Ojibwa was nice, although she was a bit quirky, not like Miss Frizzle and the Magic School Bus, but close. So now Katie, Gary, and Nick, who are the main characters, get to school and they meet the new teacher, Mrs. Ojibwa. Now, Mrs. Ojibwa promises the class that Michigan history is going to be really exciting this year. So, in the afternoon, the children get into their groups, and because Katie, Nick, and Gary do such an outstanding job with the outline of the geography of the Lower Peninsula, Mrs. Ojibwa calls them up and secretly presents them with this Michigan pen, telling them this may come in handy. And then, oh wait, just a minute. What's that? Oh, sorry, that was Mrs. Ojibwa. She reminded me that I'm supposed to be giving you a Michigan pen like she gave to Katie. But I'm going to be sending your pens through cyberspace. So hold out your hand, and at the count of 3, I'm going to send it through to you. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Grab it. Good job. Okay, now your pens are only going to work when I activate them. So let's get back into the story. Now the children go into the lab, they put in their research, and the only thing that comes up on the computer screen is the Michigan icon. So if they'll press that and see what happens. A terrifying adventure. As they pressed enter, their fingers began to tingle. The children looked at one another. Each seemed to be almost weightless, floating in the air. What was happening? Before they had a chance to speak, they encountered another strange sensation. It felt like tiny threads weaving in and out of their bodies. It wasn't an unpleasant feeling. It was almost like being tickled. Next, they felt a pull they couldn't resist, as if a great magnet were on the other side of the screen and their bodies were made of steel. It was then they realized they were being pulled through the computer screen. As quickly as they started, all of these strange sensations stopped. It was freezing. Okay, make a prediction. Where do you think they were? Click your pens. If you guess that they were inside the glacier, you're correct. The children found a transparent area, almost like a window in the glacier. As they peered out, they found themselves moving slowly down a mountain. Gradually, they began picking up speed. Now, Nick knew from his research on glaciers that something was wrong. Glaciers move very slowly, maybe only inches a day, yet this one was going almost at warp speed. The children could only watch with wonder as the glacier sped on like a massive locomotive. Great areas of land were being gouged and dug out, leaving 5 huge craters in the glacier's wake. These areas looked familiar to the group, but they couldn't quite put their fingers on where they had seen them before. They saw hills ahead. As their glacier train sped along, each hill was flattened. Trying to get his bearings, Nick pulled out his compass. They were moving south. Here the land was the flattest. Suddenly they came to a grinding halt. Now what? They began to move again in the opposite direction. Nick checked his compass, and sure enough, they were moving north, dragging with them piles of till that dribbled out of the glacier and formed little hills behind them. It seemed to be getting warmer. The icy walls began to drip. Gary spotted an area in the glacier wall that appeared to be thin. With a mighty soccer kick, he punched out the wall. Now, at this point, Katie takes out her pen and she's going to take notes on what they've just learned. And the boys are going, but we don't even know how we're getting home, but then that's Katie. So when Katie clicks the pen, that's what pulls them back to school. So let's get into book 2. This one is chapter The Narrow Escape. The angry, raging river shot along the riverbanks like a rocket out of control. Katie hung on to the huge rough log with both hands. Splinters dug into her skin. The cold, icy water splashed over her face, making it impossible for Katie to open her eyes. She had no idea where she was going. She just knew that she had to hang on tight if she were to survive this terrifying ride. The river twisted and turned as if it were searching for a quicker path to its destination. Katie felt the river pick up speed as if that were possible. In the distance, a deafening roar could be heard. It was so loud that Katie couldn't hear herself think. Louder and louder, the sound surrounded her. Suddenly, Katie and the log seemed weightless, as if they were suspended in midair. Katie opened her eyes just in time to see her log boat go over an enormous waterfall, plunging her to the depths far below. Let's read on to see if her nightmare comes true. Now, on the way to school, Katie tells Nick and Gary about her nightmare, and Gary thinks it sounds like fun, like a log ride, maybe at Cedar Point. Now, the morning routine goes on as usual, and the only mishap is when Katie tears a small hole in her jeans pocket at lunchtime. Then after lunch, Katie's group goes into the lab to put in their research for the natural resources of the Upper Peninsula. What a dream gone wrong. What happened next was quite different from what they expected. As the tingling subsided, the 3 thrill seekers found themselves enveloped in total darkness. Click your pens. Hey, who turned out the lights? Gary yelled as he stumbled around trying to find his friends. Katie and Nick let out a nervous giggle. Only Gary would think of something harebrained to say at a time like this. Katie, did you forget about this particular part of your dream? Gary asked as he ran his fingers along the cold, damp rock. Like the part where we get lost in a deep, dark hole in the ground with no way out? Katie reassured Gary that this hadn't been part of her dream. Then the 3 children shared the same thought. If this wasn't supposed to happen, what else might go wrong? Now finally the group finds one another and they see a sliver of light above. So as Gary gives Katie a boost to get out, something falls from her pocket. Now when Gary goes to climb out, he slips on something on the ground and thinking it might be a souvenir from the past, he absentmindedly picks it up and sticks it in his pocket. Now in the light, they see that they are at an abandoned copper mine called the Cliff Copper Mines. So if you'll click your pen, this is actually the Cliff Copper Mines up in the Keweenaw Peninsula. And you can take tours through the mine. And I have a little piece of raw copper to show you. Okay, this is kind of what it looks like. Okay, now, as Katie and the group are sitting around kind of taking in their surroundings, Katie thinks, well, maybe she should take notes on what they've just learned. But before she can reach for her pen, they feel that familiar tingle, okay? And the ride, a nightmare come true. Click your pens. The first thing they were aware of were the deafening sound of a raging river and an ice-cold mist washing over them. When their world came into focus, they found themselves standing next to towering logs 30 to 40 feet high. These logs had been dragged through the snow to the river's edge during the winter because that was the easiest way to transport them. Now the snows were melting, causing the river to swell and move with a dangerously swift current. The logs would be pushed into the river where they would shoot along to the nearest sawmill. Was this going to be the log ride in Katie's dream? Katie, Nick, and Gary noticed that one of the logs was almost dislodged from the rest of the pile. It wouldn't be too difficult to give it a nudge and set it free. Just one little, it happened in a split second. Logs began to roll like oranges in the store when you remove one from the bottom of the pile. The three children tried to jump out of the way so they wouldn't be crushed. In their haste, they tripped and tumbled into the freezing, raging river. The frigid water stung their noses and gripped their bodies like a vice, making it hard for them to catch their breath. They grabbed for anything to keep them afloat. All three finally surfaced and found themselves on top of what seemed to be angry logs banging and bumping into one another, like cars during rush hour traffic. The logs jammed up for a moment, which allowed the three shivering, terrified, water-soaked children to get onto the same log and catch their breath. Enough of this log ride. This is anything but fun. Nick yelled to Katie to get the pen and send them back home. Click your pen. As Katie reached into her pocket for the pen, the log gave a sudden jolt and broke apart from the jam. Now what? They began picking up speed. Katie screamed. She knew what this meant. They were headed for a waterfall. As they came closer and closer to the falls, the noise was unbearable. Gary was yelling something to Katie. She couldn't hear him, but she knew what he was screaming. Katie reached into her pocket for the pen. All she felt was a hole. Crazy thoughts went through her mind. What would Mrs. Ojoboa tell their parents when they didn't return to school? Okay, and then we're going to introduce you to volume 2, and this is a little snippet, a little preview of what's coming. Dirt was in Katie's mouth, ears, and nose. She opened her eyes, but found herself in total darkness. Gritty soil fell into her eyes, causing them to burn. Damp earth surrounded her, and she found it difficult to breathe. Where am I? Katie wondered frantically, and even more important question was, how will I get out? Click your pens. In the distance, Katie could hear the howling of a wolf. The howling grew louder as the wolf approached. The wild animal started digging frantically at the mound of dirt. Thoughts raced through Katie's mind. Would she be saved from the dirt, only to be mauled by a wolf? Click your pens. Okay, and here are some links to science experiments you can try at home. And these links are going to be posted on my website, lynnesmyles.com. And while you're visiting my website, you can also find a description of the series and merchandise that support the stories. And if you have any questions or comments, I would really love to hear from you. And if you please share this video with someone you think would like to take a wild journey through Michigan history nightmares. Now we're going to pan over to volume 2. This is what you're going to be looking for next in the video series. And volume 2 has 2 books, book 3, Entombed in a Hopewell Burial Mound, and book 4, A Shocking Encounter with the Iroquois and 3 Fires Native American Tribes. So I thank you for joining me. Hope you'll join me again for the next series. So we're saying goodbye and sweet dreams.